And we have to recognize that if our multiculturalism is our superpower, it's our racism that is our Achilles heel.
Welcome to the Stakes for Democracy. I'm Brad Rourke with the Charles F. Kettering Foundation. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan operating foundation that focuses on advancing and defending inclusive democracy. Today, I'm talking to Kettering Senior Fellows María Teresa Kumar and Kelley Robinson about Project 2025. María Teresa, Kelley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brad. Good
Happy
morning,
to be
Kelley.
here.
Good to have you both here. Today, we are continuing a look at something called Project 2025, led by the Heritage Foundation, but not only. A number of conservative think tanks, including over 400 conservative scholars, have put together this plan, which is a very detailed blueprint for what a conservative new presidential administration might do and how to get there. At more than 900 pages, it is breathtaking in scope and outlines a regressive and exclusive vision of democracy. María Teresa Kumar, you are the co-founder and president of Voto Latino Foundation, a nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c3 organization, and its sister advocacy organization, Voto Latino, both the largest and most effective Latino voter registration and Latino youth advocacy organizations in the country. Immigration is right at the center of Project 2025. María Teresa, what would it do to immigration policy?
Well, I think, first of all, it goes to the center. First of all, Brad, thank you for having this conversation, because I think that what most folks read when they see Project 2025 is just the headline. And thanks for diving deep into what that means for the American people. Because when we look at what it means, and we could look at it through the lens of immigration, it basically goes into the core of who we are and disintegrates our democracy from within. And it is an agenda that is very clear. They have not only talking points, but policies, and they are right now actively recruiting people to fill these positions. When you look at it through the immigration policy, for example, it is not policy. It is going head on against who we are as Americans and our identity. Since our founding, taking into account the Native Americans and the tragedy of the folks that came, of the African American community, immigration has been a core of who we are as a country. And what they are trying to do is basically not only other us, but drive divisive racism to ensure that we don't continue meeting the moment of what is America. And Brad, what I mean by that is that it is because of a multicultural society that America has been able to meet the moment for the 21st century. And I deeply believe that is our multiculturalism that is our superpower. And what Project 2025 is trying to actively do is create a society where they do mass deportations and target Americans that are not white. Because technically speaking, you do not know if a person is American based on the color of their skin, based on their accent, based on how they dress. And so it creates a police state where neighbors turn against neighbors, and it allows us to divide ourselves in ways that are not repairable.
María Teresa, you'd mentioned mass deportation, and I want to get back to that in a moment. But first, I want to turn to Kelley Robinson. You are the president of the Human Rights Campaign, with more than 3 million active member supporters, more than 200 staff, tens of thousands of volunteers across the country, the first Black queer woman to lead this largest LGBTQ plus civil rights organization in the U.S., and a Time Magazine 100 most influential people under the heading Titan, which is just amazing. Talk to us about how Project 2025 is particularly threatening to LGBTQ plus rights.
Absolutely. And I hope of all those nice things you said about me, the thing that people really take away is all that just represents the power of the LGBTQ plus community. We represent over 20 million out LGBTQ plus Americans in this country. A third of Generation Z identify as a member of the community. We are a growing constituency and demographic. And I think that's exactly why a Project 2025 is so scary and insidious in its intent. because it's not just about creating laws and policies that restrict our rights today. As Maria Teresa said, it's actually about dismantling the fundamentals of our democracy to take power away from the growing constituencies in this country that represent the diversity of America. And I actually think that when Project 2025 came into kind of popular terminology after Taraji P. Henson talked about it, and we've been talking about it, all over TVs and newspapers and in our communities, I think the authors were surprised because in reality, they've been beta testing many of these policies over the last several years. A lot of what you're seeing in Project 2025, you're actually already seeing rolled out in places like Florida and Texas. I'm talking about book bans, right? They want to take that national. The Don't Say Gay or Trans bans, they want to take that national. All of that is articulated in Project 2025. So for me, when I look at the risks of this for the LGBTQ community, they are deep and they are scary. I mean, what we're looking at is a rolling back and undoing of all the progress that we've made for marriage equality, all the progress that we've made for workplace non-discrimination, all the progress that we've made against discrimination in healthcare. All of that is at stake right now. They want to make sure that they're only giving federal benefits and protections to families that are designed as a married man and a married woman and their biological children. So if you're LGBTQ plus, you are out of that. If you are unmarried or divorced, you are out of that equation. If you built your family through adoption or through some reproductive health technologies, you would be out of that equation. How scary is that for what it means, not just for my community, but for all of us? Some of the authors of Project 2025 are the same people or associated with the same people who have talked about eradicating, quote unquote, transgenderism from our country. They literally don't believe that lesbian, gay, bi, trans, and queer people should exist. And I actually think what's underneath this is a deep-seated fear. Look, the demographics of this country are changing. When I say 30% of Generation Z identify as a member of the community, many of them being transgender and non-binary, for some of us that's exciting, but for other people that's deeply scary for them because the world's changing. People are changing. I had a pastor that once said, one of the reasons sometimes that that are in power are so afraid of, young people, folks of color, queer and trans folks that are emerging in our power is that they're afraid that we're going to treat them as terribly as we have been treated all these years and centuries, right? Because what we're coming up against is a moment where what the institution is trying to do is create systems and laws that enforce minority rule, right? The minority of the country ruling and having the power in institutions like the Senate and the United States Congress and the Supreme Court, right? In a way that undermines the democracy, which is about majority rule, the majority of us having a voice and being able to express that not only through the vote, but through the ways that we advocate and lobby and tell our stories. So this is really a crucial moment for this country to ensure that as we're thinking about protecting democracy, we're not protecting it for some of us, but for all of us, and actually in a way that's more bold than even what the founder's intention was.
Maria Teresa, what would Project 2025, if it were fully implemented, what would it look like? What does our future look like?
Again, I think it's taking a rule book of what the Trump administration did when he was in office. And we got a sense of it when what we witnessed in Texas. I will share with you that we had volunteers that would call in tears because they would do door knocking. And all of a sudden they would go into whole neighborhoods where whole swaths of immigration sweeps had come through. And these whole swaths would leave the child behind because they were American. Imagine being 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, coming home from school to an empty house, not knowing where your parents were. These are tasks that they've already, like Kelley said, have tried. And now it's going to maximize their efforts because they're going to have a whole system of law enforcement at their backs. But I want to be very clear. When Kelley says that they're going after our fundamentals because they're trying to give the rights to a few, this becomes much more, not even of the forefathers' intentions, this becomes a country that is much more akin to South African apartheid than anything else in modern day history. And we are living in an incredible moment because the reason that Project 2025 does have legs is because America has fundamentally changed from the last century. If you look at the majority of children in this country, the majority of children are bicultural. The second largest is Latino. We are the very first majority minority country for real, and they are threatened by what that means. But if we are able to see how successful we have come together as a country by beating back the hate and the bias, we woke up in 2018. We multiculturally organized, and we said, this is not what we want on our watch. And in that midterm election, we had first, it was the largest participation in our nation's history in 100 years. We brought in and shepherded in the most diverse Congress, the most women, the most LGBTQ, the most Muslim. And when people say, what does diversity, why does it matter? That House of Representatives, that body, came up with a blueprint for America for the 21st century because they passed over 400 pieces of legislation of what our values were. It safeguarded LGBTQ. It safeguarded a woman's choice. It safeguarded the environment. It safeguarded immigration. And when we realized that that was not enough, we did it again in the middle of a pandemic. And when we realized that our agency over our bodies was on the line, that people were banning books, that they were going after the LGBTQ community, we rose up again in 2022 and did it again. And what we're seeing right now is a multicultural energy of Americans disproportionately led by youth, because I don't have to convince youth that LGBTQ rights are fair and freedom for all, or that we need gun reform, or that the climate makes a difference, or that we need immigration reform. I need to convince them that the system works. And I have to share with you, in the last 22 days, what we have seen at Voto Latino has been a surge of voter registration, 170% more than we had since the beginning of the year. And over 65% of them are under the age of 25, saying, I want into this vision of America. And if you were to ask what gives me hope, that is what gives me hope, that we are building a base of American voters who are patriotic, who will cast their ballot to make sure that 2025 doesn't see the light of day.
Can I just jump in there? I think that this is the hopeful part of it, right? That the story of America has always been the story of progress, of moving through struggle to get closer towards that promise of the American dream that we've all learned and heard so much about. And I think that there's always been moments where our values are put into question, where our very humanity is put into question. But the beautiful thing is that we've shown up to get to the other side. The same horrific types of policies that are being presented now against the trans community, they tried to do against lesbian, gay, and bisexual folks 30 years ago, right? But now the Respect for Marriage Act is the law of the land. The same sorts of horrific policies and the ways that they were talking about isolating our community, they did to people living with HIV in the 80s. But now we're within arm's reach of ending the epidemic in our lifetime in this generation. Shoot, the same things that they're talking about today, they were saying about Black women 100 years ago, and now Ketanji Brown Jackson is on the Supreme Court.
But Kelley, this is it. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, all of their policies, whether it's voter suppression, taking away a woman's agency, trying to separate us based on color lines or on gender, or what have you, all their policies are rinse and repeat.
Yes.
But it's not made for the modern age. It's not made for the 21st century. It's not made for America to lead at the global scale. And we have to recognize that if our multiculturalism is our superpower, it's our racism that is our Achilles heel. And the more that we present a united front, the more we beat that back down. I'll share with you, I've been across college tours and people are saying, well, I don't believe in this government. I was like, no, but if you vote, you occupy the institution, and you could remake the laws and re-envision the government to a more just one. So while we may not be fulfilling the true nature of what we are today, and while we may find our past and our history, whether it's international or local, unsettling, it is the opportunity to reshape it to our liking for that 21st century future.
And what an opportunity that we get to be the one to design it right now. I mean, that's a powerful moment. So I'm as scary as things are, I think that it makes the challenge clear and the opportunity in front of us even more powerful for where we could be a decade from now or a generation from now because of the work that we do today.
That's exactly right.
Kettering Senior Fellows María Teresa Kumar and Kelley Robinson, thank you for ending on a note of hope, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.